You ready, Brian?
Thank you.
Please take a seat. Thank you all for coming. Quorum of 75 voters being present, the annual town meeting now begins. As is our tradition, let's please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I did find a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the May 6, 2024 annual town meeting for the town of Bolton. The warrant having been posted as required per our bylaws and mailed to every household, should all have one of these, we can commence our annual town meeting. I'd like to introduce everyone up front here first. Starting on the far right is our new town clerk, Jen Marquis. Next to her is our town administrator, who is retiring after 15 years, Dawn Lowe. Thank you for your service, Dawn. Then we have our town council, Bob Gibbons from Merrick O'Connell. And we have two select board members today, Bob Sikansky and Brian Boyle. Unfortunately, Stan Wysocki couldn't be with us tonight. On my left, we have our advisory committee with Bob Guerrero, Bill Nichols, Don Cole, Craig Lauer, and is Omid here? I know I didn't go in the right order, gentlemen. Craig Myers. Sorry. Thank you. I do have all those names. I'd just like to go over a few procedures before we start. We don't allow cameras during the meeting other than the Bolton Access TV, which is filming it, and you will be able to watch this at a later date. In the past, all of our votes were by aye or nay with a voice vote, but we now use our remote counting devices, which everyone should have. If anyone doesn't, please, who is a registered voter, please let us know. These have worked really well, and I think everyone appreciates using them and seeing that your vote is counted. And it's a very simple process. When we get to the vote, I will say, okay, now we're opening the vote, and you're going to hit green, yes, 1 for yes, or red, no, 2. Think about and make their vote, but then I will say we're closing the vote. At that point in time, you cannot change your vote. You can change your vote before that. We do have a couple of presentations tonight, and we try to keep those limited to a relatively brief period of time. I have reviewed all those presentations, and we should be fine with that. Anyone who would like to speak on an article after we have moved it and seconded it, then we will open it for debate. You need to come to one of these two microphones in the front, and you can queue up in a line, and we certainly will give everyone who wants to speak the opportunity to speak on any given article. We do ask that you respect a couple of things. Number one, we'd like you to keep your comments to a minute or less. Number two, that once you've made your comments, step aside and let someone else be next in line to speak. If you have a question for any of the people up front here, you certainly can pose that, and then we'll give them the opportunity to answer that. If anyone cannot make it up to the microphone and wants to speak, please raise your hand and also call out if you could. And so that we're aware of it, and we will bring a microphone to you. All right? Again, please don't speak unless I recognize you at one of the microphones. Address your comments to me, the moderator. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Doug Story. I'm your moderator. We don't speak to other people in the room. We speak to the front and to anyone up here. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't done that. And are there any questions about the procedures for the meeting? Seeing none, we'll commence with Article 1. And we're going to do a couple of test votes. I'm sorry. All right. Here's the first test question. Is the number on your remote device an even number? 1 is a yes for an even number. 2 is a no. You can now make a selection. So what this shows is all the numbers. You can look at the back of your device and you'll see the number on it. And if you have made a selection, you should see that your number has been highlighted in blue. Obviously, we don't have that many people here, so all of these numbers are not active. There are a few that still have not responded. Does anyone need more time? All right, let's close the vote. And we see that it passed. Okay, we have one more. What's the next question? $59 yeses. Okay, can we go to the next question? All right, question 2. Do you plan to participate in this year's town election on May 13th, 2024? That's a week from today. So we do have an election, and we hope that everyone is aware of that and comes out to vote if you haven't voted by mail already. This is for our town elections. It's important to take part, so please do that. And please vote to tell us whether you are going to do that. Still have a few here. We can see that are open. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote. We have 103 votes. 94 are going to vote at town election, 9 are not. That's pretty good. Over 90%. I like that. Jenny? Is the question, is anyone missing a clicker, or did anyone push their clicker and it didn't light up? Okay? If not, we'll proceed, but do let me know if during the course of tonight you feel like your clicker is not working. We'll get you a new one. Good. All right, thank you. Everyone understands how that works. It's pretty simple, and it's nice to be able to see it. Okay, now we can go to the warrant, I believe. We're ready. And Article 1 is to accept the annual reports. What is your favor?
Move the article.
Okay, it's been moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, okay. Is there any discussion or debate on accepting the annual reports? Seeing none, let's vote. Let's open the vote. And so a yes would be to accept. I should have said also that I do not read the entire warrant, okay? We've never done that. I will read the gist of the headline, and if there's any questions about the article, it's also up on the screen, but I'm not going to read the whole entire article, and some of them are quite long. Okay. Anyone need any more time on Article 1? Let's go ahead and close the vote, please. And as you can see, with 106 votes, 104 in favor, that passes. Thank you. Article 2, unpaid bills for the previous year.
Move the article.
And I'll second.
The article has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate or discussion? Yes. We do have quite a few here, items that related to, a lot of them related to the same thing. There were some late bills that came in.
That's my question.
Sure.
John Babcock from Old Bay Road. And I don't understand why we've got 2019 bills now showing up. Can somebody explain that?
The 2019
Can you hear me?
bills are, you want to
No,
take
sir.
that?
I get it.
Yeah.
Every unpaid bill on here is because it wasn't submitted in a timely fashion. Once it was submitted to us, then it was put on the warrant.
But why, sorry, I don't mean to. Why is it 19 and we're now in 24? How come the delay for so long?
The services were rendered, but the invoice was not submitted.
I don't agree with that, but okay.
All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the unpaid bills, Article 2? Seeing none, let's vote. On Article 2, a green yes vote is to approve paying the unpaid bills. This does require a 4/5 majority, which is the highest level of majority required. So in order for this to pass, we need 4/5 of everyone here to agree to pay it. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote, please. 109 to 3, and you'll see up here, passes. We needed an 80% majority, and we did get that. Thank you. Article 3 is the fiscal year 2025 operating budget, sponsored by the Select Board, and requires a majority vote.
Move the article.
Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. What we're going to do is we're going to go through two presentations on the budget. First, we have our advisory presentation, and then we have a presentation from the school district. Then I'm going to read through the budget, which is at the back of the warrant, and I'll read through it section by section, and I'll stop and pause, and people can ask questions about particular parts of the budget as we go through that. So no need to get up while we do the presentations, but at the point I start reading through it, if you have questions about the budget, you might want to queue for the microphones. So Bob Guerrero from the Advisory Committee is going to give his presentation. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Doug. I'm Bob Guerrero. I'm the chairman of the Advisory Committee. Before I get into this very short presentation on the budget, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First, this process that we go through to prepare the budget is a pretty detailed and thorough process that involves reviewing each item in the budget with the respective departments. It's a process we start in December, and from early January through mid-April, we meet every week as a group. And I just would like to thank the entire advisory committee for all of their hard work through this lengthy process. I would also like to thank our town administrator, Don Lowe, our town accountant, Nanachka Rogers, and our town executive assistant, Jenny Jacobson. They are with us through this entire process every step of the way, and we couldn't get through the budget preparation without them. If anyone is interested in observing this process at any point or asking questions about specific aspects of the budget preparation, please feel free to join us at any meeting. We generally meet on Tuesday evenings over Zoom, and all of those meetings are posted on the town webpage, and feel free to join in. And if anyone would like to participate in the process and become a member of the advisory committee, we generally have an opening every year, and please talk to the town clerk and let her know that you're interested in participating. Okay, so now let's get into this presentation. If we could flip to the first slide. Okay, so for the FY 2025 budget, the proposed operating budget is $31,139,149. And just to remind everyone, when we say operating budget, this refers to the day-to-day functions of the town, does not include capital expenditures. And the FY25 budget represents an increase of 6.8% over last year's budget. Next slide. The total budgeted expenditures, and now this includes the operating expenditures in addition to some state and county assessments and capital expenditures. For FY25, that total is $31,613,807. That's an 8.2% increase over FY24. Next slide. This slide lays out the sources of revenue that we're expecting in FY25. As usual, property taxes make up the vast majority of the revenue that we expect, and that's at almost 88% over $27 million. Going down from there, there is a small allowance for abatements and exemptions. State aid provides about 1% of the revenue at just over $300,000. Local receipts provides about 7% of the revenue at about $2.2 million. Other available funds is about 1.2% of our total revenue at just over $370,000. This year, we are suggesting using $903,831 from free cash to fund our operating budget. And we are also will be voting on $313,904 from articles tonight that will be used to fund the operating budget. And that gives us a total revenue, again, of $31,613,807, which is our total budgeted expenditures. Next slide. This slide breaks down the total expenditures in broad categories. As is normally the case, education makes up the bulk of our total expenditures. It's about 64% of the total budget at about $20.2 million. I'd like to note that these education expenditures include the first portion of the debt service that we are expecting for the new high school. The next largest piece of the budget is salary and wages for our town departments. That's just over $4.8 million, and that makes up about 15.2% of our total expenditures. Other operating expenses for our town departments are about $3 million, and that's 9.3% of those expenditures. Insurance, benefits, and retirement are about $1.9 million, or 6.1%. Debt service makes up about 4% of that budget at just over $1.2 million. And tonight we'll be voting on several warrant articles that will make up 1.2% of those expenditures at just over $392,000. And we have some other miscellaneous expenditures at about $82,000. Next slide. So this slide breaks out the FY25 operating budget by department. Again, you can see education is the largest piece of that at almost 65%. Public safety is next at 10.5%, and you can see how the other departments break out. And on the next slide, I have the same information in a table. So education, again, 20.2 million. Public safety is the next largest department at about 3.3 million. General government at about 1.8 million. Employee benefits also at about 1.8 million. Public works, about 1.8 million. Debt service is 1.2. Culture and recreation, 652,000. Human services at about 250,000. And other insurance costs at just over 131,000. Next slide. I'd like to highlight 3 items that will be on the warrant tonight that relate to some of the financial matters. Article 5 will be a request to replenish our stabilization fund. You might recall that last year we used $345,000 from our stabilization fund to fund repairs of the roof on the public safety building. When we used the stabilization fund, we committed to replenishing that fund over 3 years. So this article will provide that first of 3 payments at $115,000. Article number 6 will propose increasing the FY24 reserve fund by $138,000. This reserve fund is something that's in the budget every year. It's used to fund unanticipated expenses that come up during the year. There's been significant pressure on the fund this year in FY24, and as a matter of fact, we have already exhausted it for FY24. So this additional $138,000 will allow us to continue to deal with unanticipated expenses, which will get us through the end of this current fiscal year. And finally, Article 11 is a proposal to fully fund the Forbush Mill Road Bridge Replacement Project at about $129,000. Next slide. The town has a series of financial policy targets that we try to hit. These are not mandated, but they're best practices, and we try to meet these each year. So I'll describe 5 of them here. The first is that we would like to go into the year with a certified free cash of 3 to 5% of the total budgeted expenditures of the prior fiscal year. This year, we're going in with 5.4%, which is above that target, which is great. We would like to maintain a free cash balance heading into any fiscal year of at least $350,000, and with this budget, we are able to do that with just over $350,000 going into FY25. We'd also like to maintain overall reserves 6 to 10% of our operating budget. At this point, our overall reserves, which includes free cash, stabilization funds, and our overlay reserve, is only 5.1% of our operating budget. And that assumes that Article 5 passes tonight, which will be the first payment for that replenishment of the stabilization fund. If we continue with our plan and replenish this over the next 2 years, then by next year, this metric will be back up within the 6 to 10% range that we'd like to see it. We'd like to maintain debt service payments at no more than 5 to 7% of our general fund revenues, and our debt service payments for FY25 will be only 3.9%, which again is good. The one financial policy target that we were not able to achieve in the FY25 budget is the funding of our other post-employment benefits required contribution. Traditionally, over the last several years, we have funded our OPEB liabilities at 100%. In FY25, we'll only be able to fund that at 9%. We fully intend next fiscal year to get back to the 100% level that we have been able to achieve in the past. In reviewing the balances in our OPEB fund, at our current rates of withdrawal, we have 8 to 9 years of OPEB funding available, so we do have some time to recover this. Next slide. So this slide provides a preview of the estimated tax rates for FY25, and I just want to emphasize that this is only an estimate. Final tax rates actually won't come out officially until December. But the first line shows the expected average single-family home value. We expect that to increase by about 9.4% at just over $870,000. So based on our intended revenue, the tax rate per thousand then will drop to $15.95. Again, I want to emphasize that this includes the first increment of debt service for the new high school. And so then that equates to an average single-family tax bill of approximately $13,886. Again, that's just an estimate. The official numbers come out in December. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, the next presentation will be by the Neshoba Regional School District, and we have Ross Mulcairn, the Director of Finance and Operation for NRSD, to give their presentation. Ross?
Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. You know, as we're proud of the work that we do, not only for the students of Bolton, but across the entire school district. So we thank you for the opportunity to present the budget. Lancaster happens to have their town meeting this same night as well, so Superintendent Downing is representing the district there, but otherwise we would be in tandem here tonight. So if we could go to the first slide. Our overall operating budget for FY25, as voted by the school committee, is $66,520,432, which represents a 3.52% operating budget change. This is not our debt service or our leases. We'll talk about that in a moment, but this is strictly our operating budget. Some of the budget factors that we face this year that you may or may not be aware of are our Chapter 70 educational funding. Was greatly increased over the last several years, each year, by the Student Opportunity Act, and that more or less sunsetted on us this year unexpectedly. We got the minimum aid per student, which forced us to look at different levers within our budget to get us to a place where we felt like we could maintain the excellence of our district while also being good fiscal partners with our member towns. Our leases are presented this way just because we separate them out by our auditor's recommendation, but no change there. The only leases we have right now in the district are for our copier machines, just as an FYI. Debt service, obviously this has changed significantly. As you are all aware, we've begun a high school project here on the grounds. We're partway through test wells for our geothermal field, and within the next couple of months we'll really start to see some progress here as drilling begins for that field, as well as we'll start our site enabling, which means then you'll start seeing fences and construction trucks and all those types of things, which are a sign of progress on the site. We did borrow, we sold a $30 million bond back in November, so this first payment materializes in FY25. That $30 million bond is only stage one. We did a bond advisory group, which included Town Administrator Don Lowe and also Treasurer Kristen Noel, as well as members from the other two member towns, as we talked about strategy, market conditions, those types of things. So we did get good news out of the Mass School Building Authority back in December that we are going to get an additional $15 million in grant money towards the project, which will bring down the overall burden on the taxpayers across the district significantly. We still will have to borrow approximately another $130 million to materialize this building, but again, we're taking it in stages, looking at market conditions, because we know we don't want to lock in borrowing at that significant level until we feel comfortable with market conditions. So we'll have more as we continue with the project on that. So the overall budget that's being presented to the towns is $69,255,891. Next slide, please. A little bit more about the debt service, because it's not encompassing just the $30 million borrow that we started in November. Ironically enough, the last payment on the 20-year-old renovation and addition and upgrades to this building comes off the books in FY25. Timing was almost perfect, but not quite. Also, I think a lot of lessons were learned about renovation and additions and how money is spent with regards to these things, and part of the reason we went with a brand new building in our work with the MSBA. So that sunsets in FY25. We have a few more years left on the track and field. We also have a stabilization fund that supports turf upgrades, track upgrades along the way as part of our operating budget, but this is just the debt payment on the track and field complex. We have a leach field and fuel storage bond anticipatory note, which is more of a short-term borrow that has approximately 6 years left on it. That was a project that was done back in approximately FY18 to deal with some failures of systems here on the campus. And then obviously the new construction I just talked about. This debt is partially offset for the track and field debt with money from our athletic revolving, so gate receipts, things like that, that help support that debt payment, bringing the total debt to approximately $2.6 million. Next slide, please. Most important to the town of Bolton and the voters here tonight, the operating budget assessment, which is done through the variable assessment, which is part of the regional agreement based on 5-year rolling average enrollment in the district. If you're interested on enrollment or anything else pertaining to the fiscal condition of the district, we do have now a finance and operations center, which we have started. It has an explanatory video on how our budget is built. We're going to continue to add videos to that, but we are doing a significant document dump into that site to make sure that these types of things are available for taxpayers in all three towns. The capital debt assessment, which is done based on the October 1 enrollment at the high school, year to year, works out to be approximately $801,000 for the town of Bolton, bringing your total FY25 assessment to just over $18.8 million, which represents a 7.65% increase year to year. I think it's important to note that we really focused on getting our operating budget. That's a lever we can control versus our debt. Those things are locked in once we lock them in. But we worked really hard to get to a place where we communicated with your town administrator and worked on getting ourselves to a place across all 3 towns where we felt like this was fiscally responsible, but again, also maintaining the excellence of the school district. Just one other thing to note, because I know OPEB came up in the presentation from Mr. Guerrero. This year, the district has begun a strategy towards addressing its OPEB liability, and I'd like to thank Mr. Wysocki, who's not here tonight, Mr. Cole from the Finance Committee. I think John Petrin was here. I saw him earlier. He was also a pivotal member of that group that we put together to come up with a strategy, and I'd like to thank Mr. Haresh from School Committee, who spearheaded the beginning of that and the formation of that group. So we now have a strategy that will get us one day to a place where we feel we're in a healthier position, much like the town of Bolton relative to its OPEB liability. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, if everyone can turn to page 18 of your warrant so you can follow along. I'm going to read the total amount approved for FY25 by department, and I'll go through several pages, and then I'll stop if I see people are ready to ask questions about anything I've read at that point. So, first item is moderator approved nothing, 0. Select board, 19,620. Town administrator, $298,586. Advisory committee, $236. Reserve fund, $125,000. Town accountant, $119,964. Board of Assessors, $175,492. Treasurer, $145,205. Tax collector, $89,706. Human Resources, $14,058. Legal Services, $90,000. MIS, $87,745. Town Clerk, $129,780. Elections, $11,555. Street listing registrars, $3,350. Conservation Commission, $111,298. Planning Board, $137,959. Appeals Board, $200. Economic Development, $750. Town Buildings, $238,900. Town Hall, $44,862. Town Reports, $3,000. And the total general government figure is $1,847,000 to $275. Are there any questions on what I've just read? That is all the total government section of our budget. Seeing none, move on. Apologize. Please come down if you can, sure. Thanks.
Ron Kowalski, 45 Whitcomb Road. The question that I have is on legal services. You're experiencing a projected 28% increase. Is there something behind that that the town should be aware of? You're going from 70,000 to 90,000, which represents a 28% increase. So I'm just wondering if there's some legal issues that you're anticipating coming up that we should be aware of.
So from the advisory committee perspective, we're not anticipating any specific legal expenses. What we're noticing is that legal expenses in general have been increasing, and as one of the things that has been putting a significant pressure on the reserve fund. So just in recognition of that, we increased the budget for next year.
All right, so nothing to read into it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? And feel free to.
Hi, Samantha Fantana, 1173 Main Street. Just looking for explanation for rhyme or reason for the salary increases I notice across the board. As someone in education myself, I've never provided that percentage increase, as I know other people in industry and across the board. So why are our town employees receiving, in some instances, pretty sizable percentage increases?
The salary and wage increases are primarily the annual step and COLA increases, which are only about 3%, 3.5%, something like that. The increase that is over and above that is really because of two factors. One is there are additional stipends now that are available to some folks in town, specifically some of the paramedics and folks in the fire department. In addition, there was one new hire in FY24 for part of the year. So now in FY25 and going forward, now we're picking up a full year salary. So that also bumped up the total. And that gives the total increase of whatever we were at. But that number does not reflect individual raises.
Okay, so so you're telling me generally the increases are about 3%?
They are, yes, in the range of 3.5%, and those are annual step increases that every employee gets every year, or for those that are maxed out within their grade, a cost of living adjustment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other general government questions? Okay, we'll move on to page 23. Public Safety Building, $232,279. Police Department, $1,832,963. Fire EMS Department, $713,097. Building Inspector, $138,416. Plumbing and Gas Inspector, $20,733. Wiring Inspector, $24,011. Emergency Management, $4,180. Animal Control Officer, $21,068. Traffic Lights, $2,200. Tree Warden, $72,027. Communications, $200,914, for a total public safety of $3,261,888. Are there any questions on the public safety section? Okay, thank you. Education. Neshoba Regional School District, $18,857,473. VOTEC, $1,325,147. Post-secondary VOTEC, $27,905. Total education, $20,210,523. Questions on education?
Ron Pawelski, 45 Whitcomb Road. Is there anyone here to speak to the 10.4% increase in the Minuteman Regional VOTEC budget?
Hello. My name is Nikki Andrade. I'm the business manager at Minuteman.
Thank you.
Similar to Neshoba, we have a 4-year rolling average, which is the main driver in the increase in the budget. So if you actually look at the increase in their enrollment, it's approximately 30% increase in our 4-year rolling average. However, the increase in assessment is around 10%. So it is, we did keep our total budget to under a 4% increase, with our operating budget just under a 3% increase. Overall, our increase in total assessments was less than 1% to all of our member towns, but because of the allocation of the 4-year rolling average to each of our member towns, that's the main driver in the 10% increase.
And a follow-on question, how many Bolton students attend Minuteman?
Absolutely. There are currently 36 students. 12 will be graduating in the senior class. There were 14 that applied. All 14 were offered a slot, 2 declined and 12 accepted for next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Any other questions regarding the education portion of the budget? Okay, thank you. Public Works, Highway, $997,352. Construction and Maintenance, $209,100. Snow and Sand, $180,000. Street Lighting, $10,400. Transfer Station, $298,243. Landfill, $6,800. Sewer, $27,380. Water, $6,000. Cemetery, $16,000. And the total public works, $1,751,274. Are there any questions on Public Works budget? Okay. Moving on, Human Services. Board of Health, $72,512. Nursing, $9,144. Council on Aging, $127,327. Veterans Services, $40,932. Total Human Services, $249,915. Culture and Recreation. Library, $559,703. Parks and Recreation, $82,516. Historical Commission, $6,150. Celebration of Memorial Day, $4,000. Total cultural and recreation, $652,368. And then I'll finish with debt service on this page, $1,241,854. Any questions about any of those departments or debt service? Okay, thank you. We'll do employee benefits. Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, $879,865. Workers' Compensation, $29,589. Health Insurance, $812,234. Life Insurance, $1,400. Medicare tax, $69,727, for a total under employee benefits of $1,792,815. Other insurance, $131,234, for a total budget of $31,139,149. Are there any other questions about any of the budget before we vote? Yes.
On the group health and dental, did you go out for competitive bid this year?
Is the question, did we go out for competitive bid on
Group health and group dental.
group health and group dental? Does anyone know the answer to that?
We did not, but the plan is to do so next year.
Next year? We did not this year. The plan is to do so next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about the budget, which is Article 3? Seeing none, we have a slide here showing the fiscal '25 operating budget, and it shows the way that money will be raised for the entire $31,139,149. Any questions about this slide here? If there aren't, then we will vote. This is a vote on approving Article 3, the fiscal year operating 2025 operating budget. Green 1 is a yes vote in favor of the budget. Red 2 is a no vote. Please cast your vote. And this does require a majority vote, and it's been sponsored by the Select Board. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote, please. That passes 107 to 9 out of 116 total votes. Okay, Article 4. Thank you. Spending limits of revolving fund accounts. Sponsored by the Select Board. What is your pleasure?
Move the article.
Second.
The article's been moved and seconded. This requires a majority vote and was recommended by both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee. Is there any discussion on Article 4? All right, then let's vote if we're ready. Open the vote, please. Again, yes, 1 green is a vote in favor of Article 4. Red no is a vote against. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote, please. Article 4 passes 111 to 3. All right. Article 5. Replenish the stabilization fund. Sponsored by the Select Board. What is your pleasure?
Move the article.
And I'll second it.
The article has been moved and seconded. This requires a majority vote. It's been recommended by both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee. Do we have any discussion on replenishing the stabilization fund? Bob mentioned that earlier. All right, let's vote. All those in favor, choose yes 1. Opposed, choose no 2. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. That passes 111 to 4. Article 6, replenish the reserve fund. Sponsored by the Advisory Committee. Pleasure?
Move the article.
Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. This requires a majority vote, and it's been approved by both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee. Are there any questions on replenishing the reserve fund? All right, then let's vote. All those in favor, choose 1. Those opposed, choose 2. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote. Article 6 passes, 108 to 5. Article 7, Special Revenue Fund for Opioid Settlements, sponsored by the Select Board.
Move the article.
Second.
Article has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This requires a majority vote and is also approved by both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee. Okay, let's open the vote. Those in favor, choose yes, 1. Those opposed, no, 2. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. That passes 107 to 2. Thank you. Article 8, Amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 1, Chapter 110, Section 110-9, Animals at Large Prohibited. This has been sponsored by the Animal Control Officer. What is your pleasure?
Move the article.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This requires a majority vote and was approved by both Select Board and Advisory. Is there any discussion on Article 8? Yes.
Gentry Farrell, Wattaquatic Hill Road. I was just curious if there was like a particular impetus for this, like an example of like why this would provide a benefit that doesn't exist under the current law a little more, if that were possible.
Why has this been proposed?
Excuse me, can you hear me all right? So, the bylaw is proposed to be changed by the Animal Control Officer because she fielded, no pun intended, a couple of loose animals and brought them to the owner. The fine, and the person was fined because the animals were not under control. And there was an appeal in court, and the appeal was upheld because the animals were not in the roadway when they were contained, they were on land. So this codifies what we thought already existed. I think the use of roadway was a pretty generic one years ago, so that if an animal is at large and not under control of the owner, the Animal Control Officer can capture the animals, return them to the owner, and fine if appropriate.
Thank you. Yep.
I had a question about the same thing. Is this
Can you introduce yourself,
I'm
Alan?
Alan DePietro, Teal Road. Is this empowering the Animal Control Officer to go on private property? And if not, how is it going to increase her ability to control animals that are not in the roadway?
Okay.
It allows the Animal Control Officer to pursue animals onto private property. However, if the landowner requests the Animal Control Officer to leave their property, she or he must do so.
Any other questions? All right, then let's vote on Article 8. A yes vote would be in favor of making this change in the wording of this part of the code. Yes would be in favor, no would be opposed. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote. This passes 103 to 10. Thank you. Article 9, amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 1, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Article 3, Section 1 to 5, Non-Criminal Disposition, proposed by the Department of Public Works.
Move the article.
Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion on Article 9? Relates to trash bags versus stickers, which was a change we made recently. And so we need to update the wording to accommodate that. All right. Seeing no questions, let's go to a vote. Yes would be in favor of amending the code per Article 9. No would be opposed. Does anyone need any more time on Article 9 to vote? Okay, let's close the vote, please. This passes 103 to 7. Thank you. Article 10, amendment to the Code of Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 2, Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 233. This has been sponsored by the Conservation Commission. What is your pleasure?
Move the article.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and we have a presentation. Brian?
I believe we do have some slides. Perfect. All right. My name is Brian Barabee, Manor Road. I'm a volunteer with the Bolton Conservation Commission. Been on the commission for a little over 10 years now. I'm going to try to be really quick tonight, but we'll be here to answer any questions, just to move through this presentation quickly. The purpose of these bylaw changes, it has been over 10 years since we reviewed and made any changes to our conservation or wetland bylaws. Just on the auspices of good governance, we thought it would be time to take a look at these. We worked with a number of state agencies, scientists, individuals, organizations, to basically review these wetland bylaws, see if there were changes that we can make and definitions we could further describe. Basically, the two big things we had them look at was building in climate change and climate resiliency and adaptation, and clarifying and simplifying a lot of our existing terms. This slide right here represents basically everything that you see in your warrant. You're going to see a number of strike-throughs of things we're asking to remove, and then underlined sections of things that we are asking to add. We can go through all of those little strike-throughs and add-ons, but in general, what they are coming up with is this. We're incorporating the climate resiliency into our purpose and jurisdiction, increasing some areas of jurisdiction and no touch, and clarifying the definitions of the adjacent upland resource area. If I could get the next slide, please. All right, I just want to throw this in for a visual representation. I know it's not necessarily the best visual representation. This is Fifeshire property here in town. A shout out to the Trails Committee. They do a great job maintaining this property and have been extending some of the trails here. But this just gives you an idea, this first one, where we kind of are now, where our no-touch zone will pop off of some of the different resource areas. The middle one giving you an idea for existing properties, we're expanding that 25 to 30. And then on the end, this would be for new properties, expanding it from 25 to 40. These areas are currently jurisdictional. They're currently considered resource areas that do need to come before the commission. Generally speaking, the first 25 feet we'll keep as no touch. We'll have no disturbance there, and we're looking to expand that for 5 feet for existing, 10 feet for new construction here in town. And this just gives you an idea what that envelope will look like as it's bumped out on one particular property. That's basically the quick rundown of what I had tonight, but I would happily take any questions about what we're proposing or what you're seeing in the ward.
Do we have any questions about the bylaw? Come on down to the microphones, please.
Cristiano, 3077 South Bolton Road. Looking at the definitions, it looks like just about anything that grows near a wetland is now covered, correct?
Yeah, well, depending, usually the jurisdiction of what's covered is how many feet off the wetland, which would include anything that's growing within that area. Regardless of the type of plant, if it's within that wetland buffer zone, it's considered part of the resource area.
That's what I understood it to say. Then my problem is with the exceptions that are on the bottom of page 11. I hesitate to call this a paragraph. It seems mainly a run-on sentence. There is nothing in there that allows the mitigation of invasive species, nor the enhancement of rare native plants. If I need to get a permit to send the scouts in to pull garlic mustard, that's going to become a problem.
Gee, I was going to say, Rebecca, our town conservation agent, Rebecca Buchai, is here tonight. I'm not sure if you can help with answering that. I don't think it limits it, but.
So currently in the regulations, you should be coming before the commission for management or removal of vegetation within a jurisdictional area, within the wetland itself, within the no disturb area. However, to your note, we are trying to incorporate the control of invasive species for the purposes you've stated as well, and reasons that we've stated and worked on throughout town, not only on our public but also private land. And part of that will be in our regulations, which is not part of tonight's discussion. Tonight's discussion is just part of the bylaw. But we will be incorporating regulations associated with this bylaw that we hope to incorporate that sort of language to ensure that we're able to continue that.
Thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
So the answer is that you can't do any kind of invasive species mitigation without coming to the board, paying for a permit, and waiting for who knows how long for the answer.
So we do have the ability to have, the answer to your question is no. Within the wetland itself, you should not be removing vegetation unless you've come before the Conservation Commission. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're filing a formal permit until that's part of the permit, that's part of, the process and purpose of the Conservation Commission to be protecting and developing those natural resources. So through coming before the Conservation Commission, discussing what the plan is for the invasive species management, you can work with them to make sure that it's not adversely impacting, unintentionally of course, those natural resource areas. But again, going into part of the problem in a way that we're trying to resolve through regulations that will come after putting in place this bylaw is being able to incorporate something that we can be able to be doing invasive species management without having to come to the commission every single time that you're doing it.
That's my biggest concern. You don't have the regulations in place, but you're going to slam the door on any kind of mitigation.
That exists currently.
Not to the extent that you're currently adding to the definitions here.
Again, this is our bylaw. This is not the regulations. The regulations will break out the exemptions further.
I'd want to see those before we do that.
Thank you, Chris. Other comments?
Cindy Pilastri, Quaker Lane. I don't understand a lot of this, so, and maybe Rebecca will be the one to answer this too. On climate resilience, I just want to make sure or clarify, does that include wildlife? Because I'm asking because a few years ago, Harvard's Conservation Board opened some of their private town-owned conservation land to deer hunting because they said the deer were eating the bark off of trees. And they didn't initially even get a town vote to do it. So I'm asking if any of these changes would allow that to happen here.
It's a specific example. It's difficult to say.
I know.
So you know, these would allow for us basically to incorporate climate resiliency into what we are permitting. Wildlife is 100% a part of climate resiliency, knowing, you know, what it can support, what it does support. You know, those questions would come up, but the example that you have is a hard one. Like something like that would come in front of the commission. It's a multiple member commission. It's something we would discuss publicly and then vote on. I can't say how we'd vote. I can't say how I would vote, you know, until we actually have that discussion. But, you know, that would be something. Conservation lands are managed by the Conservation Commission. Something like limited hunting, whether it's to control populations or something else, is something that we can discuss. But it would be discussed in a public meeting and voted on.
Well, would these changes make it like more likely that that could happen? Like, or say like beavers building dams or whatever, then would you put the preservation of trees, say, over the value of wildlife?
You know, hard to say with that example. It's trying to build in the resiliency, so I think we'd try to manage that overall, but not necessarily putting one above the other. It's more trying to do what's best for the conservation land that we control, and then a lot of what tonight's bylaw changes are is building the fact that climate change and adaptability should be a part of that. You know, we're told to consider conservation reasons, but we don't always define exactly what are all the conservation reasons. So we are adding climate change and climate adaptability into one of the things that we should be managing, but not necessarily saying what we will or won't do to manage it.
Okay, and that would be your decision, like the Conservation Committee's decision, not like up for a town vote or anything?
I don't believe so. I don't want to say if I am correct on that one or not, but generally speaking, something like that would come to conservation. It would be part of a public meeting and voted on by commission members.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Gentry Farrell, that weird shaped lot that now will be part of things if this passes, also known as 505 Watt Aquatic. I was just curious what that means. Like, that looks like a strip we mow? Like, just...
And that's all... No, you're fine. That is all currently conservation land. It is showing what the envelope around it looks like. Right now, there is the 25-foot no-touch off basically the edges of bank of what the wetland is. Yeah. So that's kind of what the first one is showing. Like the amount of land we own and maintain doesn't change. It just bumps out how much we allow any type of changes to it.
I guess I'll speak to you guys later. I'm not sure what that means for...
Sure. Yeah, it can be a very difficult one. You know, a lot of it will be with the proposed new construction of where it comes off the wetlands, basically. Right now, you know, we have jurisdiction over a certain amount. We can allow certain things. We can condition certain things, but usually the first 25 feet directly off the wetland is no touch for us. We don't allow anything there. There are times where there has to be a crossing or something along those lines, but it's basically no touch. Don't try to do anything there. So a lot of this is just looking, we all kind of know growth is inevitable. We can't really stop it, it's coming. That as we're putting in new housing developments and as new developments coming in, commercial developments, it's pushing how close they can get to our wetlands and feedback.
So less about what people are doing with their front yards right now.
Correct, and what we run into in Bolton is, and many of the houses in Bolton predate the Wetland Protection Act. I'm sure there's some people here where their entire property is somehow jurisdictional within wetland boundaries. So it goes to the Conservation Commission. You know, I can't speak to the future, but generally speaking, I've been there about 10 years. Most people are fairly reasonable. Like, we're homeowners, we live in town ourselves. you know, we can see what's going on a property. If something's been there for 20 years and hasn't messed with anything, you know, having somebody move it 5 feet is probably more damaging than just leaving it where it is. Helps.
I just want to be sure, I don't like it when people don't hear what was being said. So the questions were about what the pictures are depicting, and what they're showing is that the area of no touch is increasing from 25 to 35 or 25 to 40, depending upon whether it's new construction or existing. And no touch means can't do anything, right?
Yes, correct. And generally speaking, I mean, it's, you know, we can make exemptions. Again, usually it'll be a crossing. Oftentimes, most of the properties here in home cross some sort of wetlands to get where they're going. But for the most part, any permanent structures or anything being disturbed during construction, this is an area we'd like to see renaturalized afterwards and just be left alone.
Thank you.
Hi, Scott Gear, 443 Still River Road. I was just seeking clarification under jurisdiction 233-2, which is running counter to the increasing from 25 to 30. So just to make sure I understand, you're proposing switching intermittent from 25 feet to 100 feet, which is considerable considering that probably majority of the homes in Massachusetts fall within 100 feet of intermittent streams, and what defines that?
I will double check. I think that's one of our more clarification ones. Currently off intermittent streams, it basically is already 100 feet. It's 25 feet via the statute and an additional 75 feet via the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, which is 100 total. I said I've been on the commission for 10 years. This is always confused. Most people think it means 75 feet instead of an additional 75 feet. Some of the companies that have worked in town, they always know that it's the 100, it's the 25, plus the additional 75 as part of our bylaw. But oftentimes we have new construction and new people coming to town, they read it as we're 75 feet, not 75 on top of the 25. So currently 100 feet off intermittent streams is already jurisdictional to us.
So that's not clarified in here, so my concern is now we're 175 feet, because you have the 75 feet in the bylaw, and you're changing your 25 feet to 100. So there's no clarification that this overrides that, or am I missing that?
Yeah, that's one of the sections that's being stricken out. It's on the page before it. You see it's, I'm sorry, which one is it? Shall include all lands within the first 75 feet. So, yeah, no, I understand, and again, that's always been confusing. That really doesn't change much. It really just tries to make it a little bit less confusing.
Okay, any other discussion or questions on Article 10, changes to the Town of Bolton wetland bylaws? So there are state laws and there are town laws. These are our town laws that you know, are required in this town. Chris?
Mark, actually.
Oh, Mark, sorry. Sorry, Mark.
Mark Slade, 24 Berlin Road. And if you don't mind, I'm not going to try to make it to the mic. If anyone's having trouble.
Can we bring him a mic? No worries. She's coming right now.
Mark Slade. What's on? Mark Slade.
It's not on.
Well, I got 2 red lights here.
Try it.
Hello?
There you go.
Mark Slade, 24 Berlin Road. And losing my train of thought here. I was a little confused. You're not going to have any further presentation on the change from 25 to 100, because that seems to be the most significant change here. And I would think the commission should be able to point to specific examples of where the state provisions for 100 feet and the state regulations at 310 CMR have failed you to the point that you feel the need to expand the jurisdiction of the Bolton bylaw.
Sure, and maybe I wasn't clear before. The regulation calls for the first 25, and the Bolton bylaw says an additional 75 on top of that, so we cover 100 feet. It's usually misread that people think in Bolton it's just 75 feet instead of 75 on top of the 25. It's always been 100 feet.
No, that's not true. You can tell me when the revision was made if it's true. I was involved in the original drafting of this bylaw, and it was 25. Thank you.
You can see in the bylaw where it's actually getting crossed out. That's the 233-2.
It was changed to 100, Mark. I can't tell you when that was, 10 years ago, but it was changed. It's been 100 for a long time.
Yeah, we're not actually changing, we're just changing how it's worded. Instead of 25 plus 75, we're just saying 100, just to avoid confusion.
My apologies. Disadvantage of being in New York for 10 years.
This remains confusing to everyone, so hopefully this cleans it up a bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions, comments? It is confusing. Yes.
Hi, Keith Silver, 438 Silver Road. I just want a clarification on, are disturbances grandfathered in such that if you have a disturbances, I don't know what, rock wall or a fence you built, and this bumps it beyond that, are you still grandfathered in?
The question is, are properties grandfathered in?
Well, not the property, a disturbance.
Right, an existing project.
Yeah.
It's a good question. They're not technically grandfathered in. And I'm looking at Rebecca because you can always change me if I'm wrong here, but I would think, you know, if a disturbance was pointed out, it would come before the commission. As I said before, it's something that we would take a look at. Asking somebody to move an existing rock wall 5 feet in one direction or the other causes a bigger disturbance than it fixes. It's probably not something we're going to look to do. But I was going to say, if you have further on this.
Yes. Brian would be correct in that if it was a disturbance that was previously done within 100 feet in violation, but a stone wall that's existed there for some time, or that predates the Wetlands Protection Act, for instance, you would be able to maintain that going forward. Same thing with your property, just as it is today in association with the bylaw and the Wetlands Protection Act. If it existed in compliance, it's going to continue to be that way, and you can maintain that. If it is something that was permitted under the existing bylaw, and say it's within 30 feet, but it was permitted, or rather you had conducted that work prior to this being put in place, you can maintain that going forward. You just might not be able to expand upon it without coming before the Conservation Commission. And again, that's typically what occurs today in how we address permitting.
Yeah, so just to summarize, I'm concerned, like, I could be in compliance today, but after this passes, I could be not in compliance.
And I'm hoping, in talking with Rebecca, that would not necessarily be the case. If you're in compliance today, you'll still be in compliance tomorrow unless you're proposing any major changes.
Thank you. Any other questions on the changes to the wetlands bylaw? Martha is asking if we can ask the animals what they think. Sure. Let me know when you get the answer. Okay. All right. Are we ready to vote? Okay. Let's vote on Article 10. So, again, this is an amendment to the Wetlands Bylaw. A yes vote is voting in favor of this amendment. A no vote would be voting against the change. I hope that's very clear. So please cast your vote. Thank you. And this is a majority vote and was recommended by both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee. Does anyone need any more time on this vote? Okay, let's close the vote, please. Passes 79 to 39. 79 to 39. Okay, Article 11, Four Bush Mill Road Bridge Replacement. We have two screens. Let's just go to the second screen. You'll see here that after this article was submitted to the warrant, this slight change was made. Basically, just to clarify that it's construction and engineering, it's really making clear what was intended. My opinion as moderator, my ruling is that this is not an amendment. It doesn't change anything from what was printed. So I am accepting this change as the main motion, which means we'll discuss this and debate it and vote on it. We don't need to vote on an amendment. What is your...
Move the article.
And second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So, are there any questions or discussion on the Four Bush Mill Bridge replacement? Which is over by the soccer fields. Not seeing any, let's vote. All those in favor will say yes and choose one, which would be to approve Article 11. All those opposed would say no or choose two. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote, please. 109 to 4, it passes. Thank you. Okay, Article 12 is the citizens' petition. We have a presentation. It has been brought forth by Alan DePietro. So what is your, would you like to move this motion?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion.
You'd like to move it? Do I have a second? We have a second, thank you. Okay, Alan is going to, the motion has been made and seconded, and Alan is going to give his presentation. Thank you.
All right, so if we can, we might come back to this at the end, but let's go to the next slide. So what is home equity theft? Some people probably don't know yet.
Is this mic on?
Are we on?
There
Okay,
you go. Yeah,
thank you.
please, a little closer.
Yeah, so what is home equity theft? Basically, the land court tells us that tax lien foreclosure is a court proceeding that can happen when a homeowner does not pay the real estate taxes. A town or city may undertake a tax lien foreclosure, asking the Massachusetts Land Court to end the homeowner's rights to the property. The Supreme Court, almost a year ago now, found that tax lien foreclosure laws like the ones in Massachusetts are unconstitutional, and under the U.S. Constitution, property owners will be owed compensation from a tax foreclosure if that property taken by the government is worth more than the tax debt owed. Next. So the amount that exceeds the tax debt is owed is sometimes called the home equity. Supreme Court decided that when taking a tax-taking authority keeps more, the excess or surplus, the authority has made a taking. Massachusetts tax scheme provides no opportunity for the taxpayer to recover this excess value. The highest court in the land has explained that property rights are fundamental and cannot be erased by a state statute. Next one, please. So the situation Bolton's in. So a year ago, Tyler versus Hennepin, U.S. Supreme Court said unconstitutional. Massachusetts legislature has yet to address this problem. And then we have a quote there, a whole tract of land was sold when a small part of it would have been sufficient. The tax collector exceeded his authority. So the next one. The Massachusetts Attorney General's office has said that the property owner has suffered a violation of his Fifth Amendment rights when the government takes his property without just compensation. And that is 42 U.S.C. 1983. That's the federal law that's going to allow these plaintiffs to recover attorney's fees and costs and possibly not be indemnified against personal issues, but we won't go into that one. Already the Mass Legislature, it's not sufficient for a statute to authorize a taking and then provide a possibility for compensation. So just so everybody knows, up in the upper right corner, that would take you to this whole slideshow. Down in the lower left corner is more information about each of these slides. Please look at it later. I know you won't have time to do it now. Next slide, please. So, as we saw in the first slide, it was optional for the town to ask to foreclose on the tax title. Last year, the town council told us that a town meeting cannot supersede a state law and that town employees cannot be compelled to deviate from state law. Well, there's no need to worry about that. All of these things were always optional. The town does not have to withhold permits in this situation. The repayment plans that are required by the state are not exclusionary of other reasonable terms. General Law 6043 shows that the sale of the smallest undivided part of the property should be done, but the biggest part of this is foreclosing the rights of redemption was optional in the first place, and it's still optional now. The town can at any time vacate that land court judgment and get themselves out of the situation that they've gotten into. And there would be no financial risk because a vacation of the judgment would put it back to where it was, with the taxes in place and the usurious interest that's being charged at 16% still accruing. So we can go to the next one. What if we don't sell the properties, as the case is right now? Just take a quick one. Say $50,000 was owed, property is worth $550, the equity owed back to the owner is $500, and we're looking at close to $500,000 in legal cost after one of these federal cases goes through. The above example alone would cost the town $1 million to collect that $50,000 debt. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. This money would be spent without any approval at town meeting. The back taxes and any future taxes on the property would never be recovered if that property's not sold. So that's taking tax off the roll too. The only legitimate interest of a town in seeking to foreclose the rights of redemption is the collection of taxes due on the property together with costs and interest. Next one. So, you have the summary in your book, but I'll give you the highlights. Municipalities will be held liable for the equity taken and the legal cost in ongoing state and federal actions. A yes vote will provide an alternative, working with the property owners to create reasonable repayment agreements and allow the permitting necessary to sell at full and fair market value, avoiding the need for a public auction. If the town wishes, and this is the biggest part of the whole thing, if the town wishes to retain a foreclosed tax property, it will follow the same procedures as it would for any other property put to public use. It'll come before this meeting and will require 2/3 of you to decide to spend that $1 million. Right now, somebody's spending that without any of our opinions. I could take some questions, but I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, thank you. Bob, did the town have a comment?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Oh, sure.
We are in litigation over this very issue, and so the select board is not going to make any comments or respond to any questions for fear of endangering the town's position in those legal proceedings. We have asked Attorney Gibbons to make some statements about the presentation. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, so on the tax taking, that Tyler decision, I mean, right now in Massachusetts, there's statutes that govern tax taking. It's not something that happens overnight. In fact, it takes several years. In the Tyler decision, which is a Supreme Court case that was referenced that came down last year, it didn't find that the Massachusetts statute was unconstitutional. There's certain aspects of that statute that are unconstitutional. The tax taking itself occurs, when it first occurs, all of that is a recording against a delinquent taxpayer's property. That's called the taking instrument. That is the taking, but that doesn't divest an owner of its property. Owners have a right of redemption. In fact, even after that tax taking is recorded against one's property, under the statute right now, you have to wait 6 months, the town would have to wait 6 months, then it actually has to file an action in land court. You have to actually have to get a final judgment from land court before you can proceed with an auction of the property. That sometimes takes several years. So this isn't something that happens overnight. What the Tyler decision found was that if you go through that whole process, you get a final judgment from the land court. Under Massachusetts law, as currently written, if you then sell that property, the town sells the property at auction, and if there is a surplus, as the statute is currently written, the town would get to keep that surplus. The way the Tyler decision reads is that, hey, you can recover, the town can recover all its back taxes, all its cost, all its interest, but any surplus, any equity that the gentleman mentioned, that's really what it is, the remaining equity there, that would go back to the prior owner. So the statute in Massachusetts does have to be changed, and the legislature is working on that right now. But this is all governed by statute. This town meeting cannot, and that statute gives towns the authority to do tax takings. This town meeting cannot dictate or take that authority away. That's governed by statute. So the legislature is going to come out with new legislation that will address that equity portion of the tax taking. All the prior steps are not going to be changed because the taking itself is not what Tyler found was wrong. It was really just at the end, if there was a surplus, that has to be addressed. And in the meantime, if there is such a situation, towns like Bolton, and Bolton's not alone here, this is across the board in Massachusetts, towns are going to have to deal with that excess. They realizing that it very well is going to have to go back to the prior owner of the property. And the land court knows that too, obviously. So the land court is currently hearing motions as part of that foreclosure proceeding dealing with surplus. So there are mechanisms in place right now. Towns like Bolton, we know we're going to have to deal with that down the road, and we're confident that before that time, any cases that are pending now, the legislature will have addressed that and will have amended the statute. But it's not for this town meeting or any town meeting across this Commonwealth to change that statute. That's for the legislature, not for town meeting. So the citizens' petition is non-binding. So you can certainly vote on it, but it's not going to require any action on behalf of the town. That's going to come from the legislature.
Thank you very much. Do we have comments?
Can we put the wording of the article up?
Which slide?
It would be back. There was
The first one?
No, back to the first one that just has the text.
Can you back up to the first slide that?
So clearly it says to immediately stop all foreclosures until the Massachusetts legislature has rewritten the Constitution. We're not asking to change the state law. That needs to be done by the legislature.
Okay. Yes.
Kate Bayuk, Wheeler Road. I'm going to vote against this just because there are a whole host of legal issues. But the first part of this sentence says to immediately stop all foreclosures on tax titles. And given the town's finances and the way that the town runs, we shouldn't be incentivizing anybody to not pay their real estate taxes because they're not going to face consequences.
Okay. Other comments?
Oh, I've shrunk. Hi, so I need...
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Pat Westwater, John Autumn Lane. So I just want to clarify, you said that the town is still going to have to deal with this in spite of the fact that the state legislature is changing some of the way that they recommend or will determine that this is dealt with. It seems to me that if somebody owes back taxes on their property and pays the back taxes plus expenses plus interest, that it would be grossly unfair for the town to then sell the land and keep the rest of the money that belongs to the person who owns the land. So I don't understand exactly what impact a vote here would have, but if there is there are some decisions that the town might be making before the state determines what the state thinks should happen, that perhaps a vote here would enable the people here this evening to at least say, hey, Either we think it's right that if someone owns property and pays all their back taxes plus interest, of course they should keep, and the land is sold, of course they should be able to keep the rest of the money that's theirs, or not. So would this vote perhaps have, at least enable us to make that kind of statement, and perhaps have some impact on the way the town deals with this?
Okay, thank you. Do we have another comment here?
Yeah, that's a very good question, but under the current statute, as written right now, the homeowner, the property owner, has a right of redemption. So when a homeowner doesn't pay taxes, the town decides to move forward, like it has the right under the statute to do that. It does a tax taking, records the instrument. Any time up before the action gets filed, 6 months later in court, the homeowner can redeem. They have a right of redemption to redeem the property by paying the taxes and any costs incurred by the town. Even once the foreclosure action is filed in land court, and that action, again, like I said, can take several years. Even during the pendency of that action, the property owner can still get the property back by paying the outstanding taxes and any cost incurred by the town. Just have to, you file a motion in court with the land court. So during the entire, it's not until a final judgment issues after that entire process has taken place that the taking is finalized.
All right, so I have a follow-up question to that then. If in fact the person can't pay the taxes and the land is sold, then it makes sense to me that the person that with the money that it is sold for, if you deduct the taxes owed plus the interest on those taxes, that then the remainder of the proceeds should then belong to the property owner, correct?
That is correct. And that is what the Tyler decision held. In other words, if you go that distance, and a lot of these cases don't go that distance, the town only has one matter right now, and that's the litigation that was mentioned that I'm not going to comment about because it's current litigation where that issue is going to be addressed by the court. I'm not aware of any other situations here in Bolton right now, but if one was to surface, it would take some time to get to that point. But under the Tyler decision, the town, like any other town right now, is going to have to deal with that surplus because that surplus under Tyler would go back to the homeowner. And the Attorney General has issued, just a guidance, because obviously legislation hasn't been amended. The guide pretty much advises towns, hey, you're going to have to deal with this surplus because under Tyler, you don't get to keep it. So we're aware of that like all other towns, and if we get to that point, we're well aware that we're going to have to deal with this decision, and the surplus after all payments will go back to the prior property owner.
Okay. So this would just be the town saying, people here this evening just vote to say, yes, we agree that this is, okay.
But the whole point here is that this is all statutory, so even whether or not the town moves forward tax takings, that authority is given by statute, so town meeting can't instruct the custodian of Bolton's, the custodian who handles tax takings to stop or move forward. That's within their discretion to move forward tax takings under the statute. That's outside the jurisdiction of this town meeting. That's why the position of the town this year is the same as last year, that this citizen's petition is non-binding.
Right, but if we feel like that what the decision was made last year may be wrong, it gives us the opportunity to at least say, hey, we think this is the right thing to do. Which
again, non-binding,
right,
but Tyler, the Tyler Supreme Court decision, Tyler pretty much has already decided that, and Bolton, like all the other towns and cities in the Commonwealth, are going to have to deal with the Tyler decision, and the legislation is working on it, and there will be new legislation. The statute is going to have to be changed. In the meantime, if we had a case right now where we had a surplus, we would not be spending that surplus. We'd have to deal with the homeowner and deal with it that way.
by deal with you mean return it to the owner.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, Tom Ballard, 27 Bear Hill Road. First, I'd like to comment to Mr. DiPietro. You need not worry, because the town will not do anything to remove you from your property. We have a situation, as you well know, Don, and our good fellows here from the Bolton Police who have taken the brunt of it. We have a property currently in town that's visited almost, definitely on a weekly basis almost from the police, that has not paid taxes in several years. And to your point, They have no incentive to. We just voted on a, big budget increase. They're not paying any taxes against this. And just for everyone to know, this is not a law. This is not a law, it's the town practice. Am I incorrect in stating that, Don?
You are incorrect in what you just said, yes.
I am? Okay. Well, it's in contradiction with the email that you had sent me.
No, it's not. What you're talking about is not germane to this article, and actually, conversation should be ended, because as town council said, what we're dealing with tonight is statutory, which is above the town policies in certain areas.
Okay, is there a question?
Question would be, can we get it added maybe to the next meeting?
I don't know how many town meetings you've been to in the past, but the next town meeting is in a year.
I can wait a year. You've waited several years. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or debate on Article 12, the citizens petition? Yes, Alan?
I just have to repeat again that this is not about the state legislature. This is about actions that were optional on the town's part that were taken before the legislature takes place. So I disagree with the kind attorney.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right then, let's vote on Article 12. We'll open the voting, and a yes vote would be in favor of supporting the citizens petition as worded, and a no vote would be opposing passing of Article 12. And this is a simple majority vote. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote, please. This article fails. 93 no to 23 yes. Okay, Article 13 is to authorize town elections.
Move the article.
Second.
All right, we have moved and seconded the article. The town election is next Monday, the 13th. Please vote. Is there any discussion on authorizing the town election? If not, let's vote. Those in favor of authorizing the town election, please vote yes. Opposed, vote no. And I just want to say one more thing right before we end here. We do have one more vote that we'll do by voice vote, which will be after this. I want to thank both Pam Powell and Don Lowe, longtime employees of the town of Bolton who are retiring. They both have been great people to work with over the years, and we're going to miss you. And also want to thank Bob Sikansky, who's stepping down from the select board, and he's been on many boards in town. Thank you, Bob. Okay, let's close the vote. There's one more after this. Don't run. Okay, that passes 111 to 0. Thank you for the unanimous vote. We're going to do a voice vote on the last one. I would like a motion to dissolve the meeting.
So moved. Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.